come in. Remember to tuck everything, purses, no one has any food out the front. Yes, correct? Awesome? All right, no sudden movements. They're giant. No, I'm kidding. They're really adorable. So in a minute you're going to meet the Apex Protection crew led by Paula and Steve, and they're going to do a Q&A. We'll probably explain what you're seeing on the stage first. We'll open it up to questions. I'll come to you with the microphone so they can hear your questions and so can everyone else. So we'll just have a really good time with the Wolf Pups. Be back in a second. They'll be right in. A couple of them will jump. Don't get scared. So they're bringing some of them up this way. They'll jump this way and up, and the other one I think they may bring around the other side. All set? All right, come on in.
Hi. You remember this place? You took a nap here last time. And you left a lot of hair.
At least they did their business out in the truck now, so we don't have to worry about that. That's all good. So this is Paula and Steve in the Apex Protection Group, and their handlers, and Kona, Loki, and Thor, right? Kona, Loki, and Thor.
Yes.
Kona,
yes.
Loki, and Thor. Who was here last year? Do you guys remember seeing them as young pups? Look how big they've gotten, right? So thank you guys so much for coming out and seeing Julia's film. You know, it was such an amazing experience last year for us to come out and share this film with your community, and the response was absolutely incredible, you know, and so that really was, we're seeing some healthy conflict here. The puppy's going to the big brother to make sure that he's still in charge because he needs a leader, and so he kind of taunted him into doing that to him. So it's kind of like, you still got my back? And so then Kona does that to him and says, yeah, I got your back. And he goes, okay, good. So it's an interesting way of communicating, and they love each other. So, but anyway, so, you know, this particular film means so much to us. You know, and Julia really wanted to be here again this year to share her thoughts in making the film. You know, she chose Minnesota because that really is the hub, the last place in the lower 48 where there were wolves and where the final fight was. So she really wanted to focus on Minnesota. We think she did a really beautiful job of showing, you know, the whole dynamic of all the issues that are going on right now, right here in this country, and that it's just the perfect introduction film, especially for people who aren't even aware that this is going on, where wolves are not even on their radar. This is a really great way of sharing what's going on and really evoking the importance and the emotion. But we're here today to answer for Julia, to kind of help represent her. So if you have any questions about the film, you know, we can go ahead and answer a few questions, and then we'll tell you a little bit about ourselves and talk a little bit about the pack, and do a little wolf Q&A as well. So just starting with some questions about the film specifically. Does anyone have any?
Right here.
I have a question that's not exactly about the film, but it was mentioned in the film about how the wolves being reintroduced even affected the rivers coming back. And I know I've read about that process, but I don't remember how that works. Do you know how it is?
Yes, sure. So first of all, the reason we call ourselves Apex Protection Project is that it gives us the opportunity to start the conversation about how wolves are our apex predator, our apex mammals in the environment. And so it's called a trophic cascade. And basically the apex predators, not just wolves, but bears and lions and other
Sharks in the ocean.
Sharks in the ocean, they control the entire ecosystem. They keep the entire ecosystem in balance. So when you remove an apex predator from the ecosystem, the rest of the ecosystem, it starts to fall apart because everything falls out of balance. The minute you don't have a predator keeping the other animals in check, for instance, herds of elk, which are ungulates, they get very comfortable, they get very lazy, and they start to just strip the environment. They eat everything, and by doing that, all of the plant life starts to die. And as the plant life starts to die, the birds have no homes. The other animals, the foxes, the smaller, rodents, the beavers, everyone starts to lose their homes because now there's no trees and everything is dying. So they all leave the community, and so then what happens is the banks start to erode because nothing is really controlling it and keeping it in place anymore, and it starts to lose its shape and its structure. And when that happens, then of course, you know that everything at that point is becoming sick and dying. So when they reintroduced the wolves back to Yellowstone, they flourished. And the herd started having to move to avoid the wolves. And that's very healthy for a herd. You want them to move to stay healthy and fit, and so then that gives the environment a chance to repair itself and regrow. As the environment started to become healthy again and trees started to flourish again because the elk were being forced to move around, all the animals started slowly coming back. And as the animals started coming back, beavers are the main mechanics, in our environment. Without beavers, a lot of the ecosystem also falls apart because they help with a lot of the structure. They started returning. And by that happening, even with their damming, that helps to shape the rivers as well. So when it trickles down and you start to see the rivers coming back to life, then you've got a really well-balanced, healthy ecosystem. Now you can't. The problem is that especially in our country, wolf management, what they're trying to do to keep everybody happy is they're reintroducing the wolves. They're bringing them back, to the wild, but they're keeping them literally hovering right over the endangered line, just enough so that people who love wolves are like, well, okay, and then people who are afraid and hate wolves are like, well, all right. But that's not nearly enough to help keep the environment healthy. You have to have a healthy amount, the natural amount that we're supposed to have in the ecosystem. So, we had a beautiful, I don't know, did anybody attend any of the lectures today by chance? We had a coexistence panel today, which was really exciting. One of, I think, our most exciting moments was bringing ranchers and farmers and advocates to the table and starting to try and find a balance so that ranchers know that they're not alienated and hated because they're afraid of wolves, and maybe helping to give them some tools and support so that they can start maybe practicing some non-lethal coexistence with the packs in their area, the predators, but also keeping their herds safe. So that is something that's really important to us, and a lot of that is kind of going off track now. I got so excited, I just kept on rambling. But so, they're afraid to allow the population of wolves to really grow to the level that they need to keep the environment healthy. So hopefully with some education, support, and balance, we can start to convince, our government and the people who are affected by our predators to know that they're safe in allowing that to happen.
And this is not an overnight job. It probably won't happen in our lifetimes, but we work a lot with children because we believe the next generation is a generation that really needs to be educated, and to bring them up, and eventually we'll all get old and die and our generation will be gone, and hopefully we have a newer generation that is a more eco-friendly and they save our wildlife and bring them back.
Other questions for them about the film or about the wolves? Either way, right back here.
So given the success in Go
ahead.
Given the success in Yellowstone, is there any chance to use that as a sort of a model for Minnesota and other more closed-minded places?
Well,
Oh my God, we hope so.
Well, the thing is, Yellowstone is a national park, and the problem really happens when they leave Yellowstone. So, in Yellowstone, you can't kill a wolf. You can photograph a wolf, which I see is detrimental to them in a way too, because they get used to people being around. They leave the park, and the second they cross over that invisible boundary, they get killed. So it's a lot more difficult to protect them each state has their own rules now. They've been taking on federal protection in almost all the states. There's about 4 or 5 left, but and some of them, like Oregon's half federally protected and half not. It's a very complicated issue, and sometimes they're back on and sometimes they're not, depending whether they're hovering on this line. The issue is once they're out of Yellowstone, there's nothing really to stop people or any other national park from taking a pot shot at them. And what a lot of people are working on, Mark Cook, who's one of the guys that came today to do one of the speeches, he works with trying to create buffer zones. Because a lot of times they don't go far out of the park, but they go far enough to get shot. So it's a lot more difficult in other places. We believe the answer is coexistence. Ranchers are the ones that have the real problem. Your ethical hunter doesn't usually want to kill wolves. You know, your trophy hunter, yes, and then there's people that just like killing stuff. And there's a lot of them, unfortunately. They will kill them. But if we can help the ranchers, then that's where I think we'll save a lot of lives. We'll save cows, we'll save wolves. And so coexistence is probably the thing we have to work on, because a lot of this is public land, private land that we're working with, unlike Yellowstone. So it wouldn't technically work in just the open space. It's not a national park.
So let me go ahead and I'm just going to move on just a little bit and introduce ourselves. We're Apex Protection Project. I know you saw us in the film, and we were volunteering and actually the first staff members of Wolf Connection, another wolf rescue that we helped get off the ground and helped build. Betsy Klein met us there, and we became very good friends, and that's kind of how we got our beginning. We ended up leaving Wolf Connection and starting Apex because our mission personally for our lives is, in handling the wolf situation is slightly different, and we wanted to really go in a different direction. But we're very proud of the work that Wolf Connection is doing, and they continue to do very good work. Apex Protection Project was started to focus more on wolf advocacy for wolves in the wild. But along with that, we ended up kind of becoming a rescue. And
Kind of.
we weren't really planning on becoming a rescue right away. We were going to focus on the advocacy. We had Taboo, who is our alpha of the pack, and she was our first rescue years ago. She's been with us for 6 years. But very quickly, as soon as Apex was formed, all of these pups started coming our way. And the beautiful thing about them is what we've discovered is, especially with people who've never interacted with a wolf or who are afraid of wolves or who think they don't like wolves, there's something very magical that happens when you interact one-on-one with them. And these animals provide that. And as ambassadors, they're doing amazing work in helping open people up to the true energy of who wolves are. And so you want to add something?
I was just going
then?
to say, we rescue wolves and wolf dogs that were bought as exotic pets. All of our animals were bought as exotic pets by people who, I don't know if they wanted to be Jon Snow. Their totem animal is the wolf, and they forgot to realize that the wolf is going to eat your couch and howl all night and scare your neighbors and all those things. So they don't generally make good pets. Some do, some work out. If you have a lifestyle that you basically stay at home all the time and you have time for a 2-year-old child with teeth for the rest of your life, you have to have eyes in the back of your head. They're not domesticated like dogs. These are actually all wolf dogs. They do have a certain amount of dog in them because people breed a little dog in them. It basically make them legal to sell because it's illegal to own 100% wolf in most states without a Fish and Wildlife license, and depending on the state or the county you're in, it's either legal or not illegal to have a wolf dog too. They're generally problematic for people who don't do their research and think that they have the kind of lifestyle that, you know, they could have one of these guys, and not realizing that it is it's a full-time commitment. It's not like having a pet.
Well, and in all fairness, most of the breeders in this country, we don't feel that they practice ethically. They are willing to sell to anybody who's willing to pay the money, and they don't prepare the buyers for what they're getting themselves into. Matter of fact, they'll pitch something that's a lot easier and give the impression that these animals are easy to care for. So a lot of these people go in with a lot of naivete and then discover, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? So
Just so you know, these guys are not drugged, by the way.
they're just tired. Well, they were here
just
last year
pooped
too, so
out.
they're very comfortable here. So who we have here?
Drugged, right?
No.
He looked at me like, he's like, what are you talking about?
So Danae is with Thor, and Erica is with Loki, and Steve has Kona. And Kona was our first Apex rescue. He was rescued, he was actually bought as a pet by a young man who literally took a year off of his life working to get him and bring him up and try to do the best possible job that he could. And I think he was living a little bit in a fantasy world, because then after a year he realized, oh wait, I'm still living at my mom's house and I need to go get a job now. And he couldn't get a job in Los Angeles, and he ended up getting a job in New York City, which is not a good place for a wolf dog. So, you know, most sanctuaries feel very strongly about, because, you know, the dumping of wolf dogs is such an epidemic, they have a policy that is, if you give us your wolf dog, that wolf dog now becomes the property of the sanctuaries, and you have to sever ties, because that's just how it is. If you agree to board an animal, then every wolf dog owner in the world who's frustrated will be like, oh, can you just take care of him for a week? I don't want to deal. And that
And they
becomes a
don't
bit of
come
a
back.
problem. Huh?
And then they don't come back.
And then they don't come back anyway. But you know, there was something about this guy. He had put so much effort into it, and I kind of have a soft spot for, you know, everybody.
Strays.
So
Man,
immediately, I just thought, this guy tried so hard. I feel so bad for him. Come on, let's help him out. And so we did agree. He, you know, to basically board Kona for 2 months, knowing that 2 months would become, you know,
Guess what?
probably 20 years.
He never came back.
Lucky us, because he's the most amazing ambassador, the sweetest creature, and he has been a joy to be a part of Apex. And he actually helped raise Thor and Loki. You want to tell Thor and Loki's story?
Yeah, Thor and Loki, last year, if you were here, they were considerably smaller. They're a year and a half now. We never rescue puppies because they're not, no one wants a puppy rescued, right? They sell the puppies, and we get them usually about 2 years in when they're pretty messed up. Come with a lot of baggage. People have done usually a terrible job, not necessarily their fault, it's that they didn't know what they were getting into. Maybe it is their fault for not doing the research, but you know, they end up not being able to socialize them properly. It's a job. It's a lot of work. So we don't generally get puppies, and these three, there was 3 of them. I see one of them went to a friend of ours who was a wolf rescue, also over at Wolf Connection, and someone called me one day and said, we have 3 puppies. I just pulled this animal out of a backyard breeding situation. The mother's dying. I got to take her to the hospital. Please take the puppies. Okay. So I called Paula and I said, there's 3 puppies coming. She's like, huh? And there's a knock on the door, and in come these 3.5-week-old little puppies. And we don't even have human children, so we're like, what do we do? So we called everybody. What do we feed? We've got a wolf formula that you have to make up with all of this stuff every morning, fresh, and I'm running around Target looking for nipples for the bottle because I don't know. I'm asking the mothers, is this one good for a little one? How old is he? With 3.5 weeks? What? Well, he's not really a person, you know. It's very confusing. And then teaching them to drink out of a bottle, you know, they were very, very sick. Their mother had been bitten by one of the other breeding females, and the woman was illegal, so she didn't take them to the vet, and the wound got, how would you call it? Systemic
infection.
And she lost. She was supposed to be about 90 pounds. She was supposed to be about his weight, and she weighed 45, and she was feeding 3 puppies, and they were really, really in bad shape. And we didn't know if they were going to make it, but we did everything we could. And it was every 2 hours we had to get up and feed them around the clock for like 3 months. Our hats went off to all mothers out there.
And fathers.
Fortunately and fathers, yeah. Fortunately for us, it didn't last as long as it does for human babies. It was only about 3 months, but it was the most exhausting and rewarding 3 months. And we actually got to raise puppies from scratch, which meant that we got to imprint the behaviors and socialize them in the way that, you know, was the correct way. We knew what we were doing at this point, and
To be honest, our entire team raised these puppies.
Absolutely,
I don't
yeah.
know if we could have done it on our own. It was a massive undertaking. With these guys, you know, in the wild, of course, their instinct is to resource guard, because they're wild animals and that's how they survive. So, especially with food. And so one of the things that you're supposed to do when they're puppies is every time you feed them, you have to put your fingers in the food, and you're supposed to touch their faces and their bodies so that, you know, if they ever got something, you could easily take it away without them, you know, biting you and snarling and guarding it, which they naturally will do. So, you know, the entire team was trained on how to do that, and, you know, when we were exhausted, we had volunteers coming over and staying over the night and making sure they got fed so we could get a few hours sleep. So our hats really go off to the entire team in raising these guys and making them as well balanced and happy and healthy as they are. But, you know, I don't know if you guys have gotten to meet the rest of the pack, but of course, every day we're doing a wolf social over at POCO. You can come over and meet the entire pack and meet our newest rescues who you didn't get to meet last year. But really, the world of rescue is really challenging, but incredibly rewarding. Many people, you know, let alone the wolf epidemic, aren't even aware that there's a whole nother epidemic of wolf dogs in this country. You know, it's hard to put a number on it, but, you know, the average is 60 to 70% of all wolf dogs bred in this country end up in rescues like ours or euthanized by the age of 3 because it's such an unsuccessful pet to have. So, you know, it's very important that we also teach the public that these are not real pets, you know. They're as beautiful as they are. We always say, find your local wolf or wolf dog rescue and volunteer. At least volunteer for a while until you've realized, you know, if this is the right animal to bring into your life. So yes, we can take some questions.
Right over here.
Okay.
Got the microphone?
Sure.
Thank you so much for being here. We just have such admiration for what you do and your dedication, so thank you on behalf of the people here in Sedona. My question is actually concerned the film. It was a magnificent film, and it answered a lot of questions, but there was one little gap for me, and that was, did they ever really discover what the problem was with the individuals who are trying to pass this legislation, and who was responsible for pushing it through? That question wasn't really answered in the film. I mean, was it an organization? Was it an individual?
To answer that question is not a simple question to answer. Special interest groups, Safari Club, Hunters, Ranching Association, NRA just footed a bill. A lot of people that are against the environment, oil companies, different people like that. I mean, there's a lot of big money that can benefit from stopping the endangered species list, being able to build there, being able to freely hunt, being able to trophy hunt. So there's a lot of groups that are responsible.
For example, like because these animals were on the endangered species list, not only do they have to protect the animal, but they have to protect its habitat. And a lot of that land is wanted to drill, to run pipelines through, and you know, other reasons. So it's
these guys are at the forefront of the battleground.
They're really being used as political pawns, the wolf, because there's so much stigma attached to the wolf because of our culture and because of our fairy tales and everything. There's so many other animals involved in the situation, but they've put the stigma on this particular one because it evokes so much emotion. There are very few people who are neutral about wolves. You either love them or you hate them or you're scared of them, but you mention the word wolf and immediately, you know, most people have an immediate response emotionally one way or the other. So they found that it's very useful to use them as a
Did that
pawn.
answer your question, sort of?
Somewhat, yeah.
So the Safari Club is obviously a trophy hunting club. They have a lot of power and money, and these are very valuable to them, and they want to be able to hunt them.
I spent last year, the year before, January, in Darby, Montana, which is well, it's the battleground of a lot of this. Darby is particularly sort of still stuck in the 1800s in the way that they believe in the sea, and a lot of their money is made from outfitters bringing in hunters to shoot the big elk with the horns. So they compete. Their whole logic down there, which is not true, they don't believe the science, so it's true to them. And you know, perception is everything really when you look at it. So they believe that the wolves are decimating the elk herds, and they're taking away their livelihood. So now you're talking to people that believe this on an almost religious belief. So it's on a religious level. It's like arguing religion with someone. They are taking away their livelihood. They're killing their children and their dogs, even though they're really not. They're stories. And the fact is, there's more elk in Montana right now than there ever was before. They move different for many, many different reasons. One, the wolves move them. They're still there. Wolves, they catch about every 20%, 28% of the time. They're lucky to catch an elk. And they usually go for the smallest, the weakest, the oldest, the sickest. They don't go for the big ones with the horns. Nobody's taking responsibility for all the big males disappearing. But they're on people's walls, and they're not taking responsibility for that either. They have bumper stickers that say, "Don't let the wolves do your hunting." So when you're thinking, you're dealing with a mindset like that, it's very, very difficult to change.
Thank you.
Question right here. Yes.
Excuse me. I had a couple questions. I think one was, what's your definition of a wolf dog? And the other thing is, are there any other national parks where they're trying to integrate the wolves or bring the wolves back?
So, a wolf being a wild animal, in most of the country it's illegal to own a wild animal like a tiger or an alligator or a wolf. So what breeders discovered a while back was if they breed a little bit of dog into the wolf, there's a loophole in the law, and now they are allowed, but they can get away with selling these animals and people can get away with owning them. The problem is that even with a little bit of dog in these animals, they still behave like wolves. So again, that's kind of snowing the buyers of these animals because they think, oh, I'm just getting a really wolfy breed of dog, it's a wolf dog. But actually they're getting an animal that has some dog DNA in it. So now the problem is that, now a lot of states, some states allow wolf dogs, some don't. And then within that, it's the counties. The wolf dogs are allowed to be bred in this county, but you can't own them. Or you can own a wolf dog in this county, but you can't in this one, which is the situation in Los Angeles. You can't have an F1, which is the first generation. So you can't have an animal who had one parent that was full wolf. But you can have an F2 and below. Proving that, though, is virtually impossible. You're allowed to have, but you have to have the proper containment, so you have to prove that you can have that, and there's a lot of requirements there. However, down in Orange County, it's completely illegal to own any kind of wolf dog whatsoever. So you have to know, what the legalities, and again, all of this is up for interpretation by the law. So you might think you're following the law, and yet then you get sued or taken to court, or animal control comes and takes your animal, and you go, but wait, hey, and they go, because they're interpreting it pretty much their own way. So that is a wolf dog, and then we also break it down. A lot of people will say, well, it's 99% wolf. A lot of the breeders try to convince you that this is 99. Well, first of all, DNA tests aren't quite developed well enough yet to tell. Even the most prominent one developed at UC Davis. Still, there's not enough of a baseline to give us the information on percentage. So it basically tells you, is there wolf in this dog or not? But so what we do is we phenotype them. So a lot of these animals are we're being told, the people are being told they're 99% wolf, and actually they're really no-lows is what we call them. They're mainly dog with a tiny bit of wolf in them. The second answer to your question, do you want to answer it or would you like me to? Does it matter?
The wolves were released into Yellowstone and somewhere in Idaho, I'm not quite sure, but it was two places, and they're not reintroducing anymore. It was very controversial. Now they're, actually in Arizona they're reintroducing, I should say. The Mexican gray has been a very controversial thing in your state. The Mexican gray wolf is only 104 in the wild right now, and there's a lot in captivity. They were captive bred to release into the wild. And now they've started what they call cross-fostering, where they take a few puppies and they sneak them into the females while she's out hunting or getting breakfast or whatever. They sneak them into the den and they rub them all over the other puppies, and then they leave. And then mom comes home and she had 5 and now she has 7, and she kind of goes, okay. Sometimes it works, sometimes not, but it's been very successful. It's more successful in releasing captive bred into the wild because they don't really know how to hunt and they don't really know how to survive properly. So they've been doing some cross-fostering, but it's very, very, very limited in your state. In every other state, they're just really managing them. Like I do little quote signs, managing, which really means killing them when there's too many. You got to remember the Fish and Wildlife, they reintroduced the wolves, but they also make money off hunting licenses, and they also make money off bullets for hunting. So primarily, it's kind of a catch-22. It's a broken system, to really, to say. So there's no more real reintroduction except in your state, as far as I know. But there's definitely management going on, and there's definitely, people fighting to try and bring the numbers up.
So like in Arizona, what Fish and Wildlife and the teams together that are trying to do the recovery project for the Mexican wolf in your state, what they're doing is they're looking at the original territory that wolves lived in, before they were slaughtered. So they're looking, they look at the terrain and they're trying to repopulate that area. They don't want to repopulate areas that didn't originally have wolves. There's a wonderful organization, I don't know if you all are aware of it, the Grand Canyon Wolf Recovery Project. And it's an organization that has done a lot of science. They've been around for a long time, and they've discovered that the Grand Canyon is the perfect habitat in all ways for the Mexican wolf. And it's kind of a no-brainer because that's already drawing so much tourism. People flock to Yellowstone to see the wolves. So by introducing wolves to the Grand Canyon, it's safe. No one's living there, and tourists can come, and a whole new, ecotourism could start there to see the wolves. But because they don't have the data to show that that was an original place where wolves did exist, they're not legally considering it right now. But that is something like, as far as, I think a lot of states probably are following that same protocol. So it's going to be a very slow process to convince them to go ahead and repopulate the areas that used to be populated by them, and then to get them to open up their minds to maybe populating an area that maybe is a new location for wolves. Was that helpful?
Got a question right here.
Sure.
A couple of questions, actually. There was a fourth one last year that really didn't want to be here. Is that...
She's here, she's at home.
She really didn't want to be here.
Yeah. She was like curled
Still
up
didn't
in
wanna
the
be.
back and hiding. And,
She's our alpha, that's taboo.
I can't really handle right now because I injured my knee too, so we figured that she lucked out, she got to stay home, because she's so shy. She's so shy. But yeah,
she
no.
was very shy, I remember.
Well,
But
generally,
my-
wolf dogs are very, very shy, and that's why, again, they don't work out especially good as pets because they don't want to be around anyone. We're very lucky that we've got these outgoing creatures, but we've rescued over 60 in the last 8 years, or have rescued and rehabilitated over 60 now, and most of them are really, really shy. So this is quite unusual for these guys to be this way.
I have another question, which is, it's hard for me to ask, but I heard recently that they are allowing cyanide bombs in the dens with the cubs and the mother.
40s.
What kind of hunting is that?
It's not hunting.
It's not, it's
killing,
disgusting,
it's murder.
and I think
And
most of the
from
country's disgusted by it.
Helicopters
Yeah.
and
So yeah, now it's
Well,
been made legal that the hunters are now allowed to go in during breeding season.
That's in Alaska, yeah.
During puppy, when they're giving birth, whatever, denning season, they're allowed to actually go into wolves and bears and kill all of the puppies and the mother and everything else while they're vulnerable, which is
That's in Alaska, but yeah.
but it doesn't make any sense because other animals get killed too. Because
Well,
of the-
traps don't discriminate, and we had Casey York from Trap Free Montana speaking yesterday at our event, and that's the issue with traps, and especially in Montana. I can really speak about Montana because I was there, and Casey educated me, and all of us the other day. But it's traps don't discriminate, and they're allowed to set them on public land. So hundreds of dogs get caught in traps every year. Animals that are not supposed to get caught in traps get caught in traps. If you set a
children
tra-
get caught in traps.
Yeah, if you set a trap for, whatever it is you set a trap for, a beaver, anyone can stick their head in there and get hurt too. So unfortunately, it's legal, and they're allowed to do it. They buy licenses, and they get taught how to do it, and there's a lot of money in it, and so people trap, and unfortunately, and the cyanide bombs. The young boy, his dog got killed, and a young boy was injured with one of those traps recently. It was in the news. The boy's okay. The dog died. But they literally explode cyanide into them. Up in Washington State, they were lacing shotgun pellets with arsenic. So if they missed, they were at least poisoning them along the way. We're a pretty brutal race of people, unfortunately.
Well, let's let him ask.
Right here. Question.
Yeah, we know that in the East Coast coming out of Canada, that there are coy wolves, and I've got a nephew who's seen them in West Virginia. Is that a problem that we're going to be having in this part of the country also?
The thing is that as wolves are being slaughtered, their populations are low, and so they're not really given much of a choice. I mean,
But it's not very common.
It's not common, and to be honest, it's the only problem is that by breeding with a coyote, coyotes are now habituated to us. You know what I mean? We live in LA. In Hollywood proper, there are coyotes everywhere. You're right in the heart of Hollywood, and a coyote runs across the street. It's bizarre, but they are living among us, so they're not afraid. So now you've got wolves who are incredible predators who are not afraid. So not that they're going to hurt us, however, they're going to dumpster dive, and stuff like that.
But here's the thing, it's very, very, very uncommon, and there's a lot of talk about it now because it's really kind of a cool, creepy story to tell. It is happening, but it's not like it's this nationwide thing where they're doing it. Coyotes are natural enemies to wolves, so coyotes and wolves don't usually coexist together, and in the rare occasion, they mate it with domestic dogs too. Every time they catch a coy wolf, they usually kill it because they don't want that genetic spreading. If they mate with dogs, they generally kill those too, unfortunately. And so it's not. There was a documentary about it that scared everybody a little bit, but it was definitely sensationalized to a point to make it exciting. They're going to come into Manhattan and they're going to follow the train tracks and all of that stuff.
The
And
Super Wolf.
it adds to the scary stories that we kind of spread. And is it happening? Yes, it has happened, but it's not probably going to be an issue.
We have time for one last question right here.
I want to know about the pups. How big is this? As big as they're going to get? How much do they weigh?
As far
What
as
do they
height,
eat?
okay. So as far as height, they're taller. They're as tall as they're probably going to get. However, they're still kind of gangly. And even at the age, even at the age of 2.5, Kona is still considered an adolescent. So they are going to continue to fill out, to mature, to become more muscular. And so, they still have some growing to do. As far as food, we give them all, they get raw meat in the morning, and they all get a pound. Riggs, who is our newest rescue, we rescued him in December, and he just turned a year old. He has a metabolism like you wouldn't believe, so he gets 1.5 pounds, and he's still a stick. And then at night, because in the wild, if they bring down an ungulate, they're going to eat all the contents of the animal, and they're going to eat what's inside the stomach, and that's nice and nourishing as far as vegetation. And they don't get that in captivity. So we supplement that with supplements, but also with a high quality holistic kibble that has those ingredients in the kibble as well to give them. And plus, because they do have some dog in them, they need that as well.
Holistic kibble. They're Sedona dogs. That's kind of cool. Sedona
They
dogs.
are.
That's
They like
totally
vortexes too. I'm not even joking. When we drove into Sedona, they all were kind of a little stressed out from travel and stuff. The minute we drove into Sedona, they all literally went, and I went, it's true what they say. It's true.
Can you tell them about, is it Sarge that you did the great rehabilitation on? Betsy was telling me about it.
Yes.
Can you talk about that? Because I think that's really quite amazing.
Do you want me to tell you? I'll tell part, you tell part.
Okay.
So we belong to a nationwide network of rescues, and we all go back and forth with emails. There's usually 3 to 7 a week. It's really kind of crazy. And there was this one animal there who had a broken leg, a severely broken leg. He was overweight. He was climbing on a jungle gym, and he slipped and snapped his leg in the back here. Where's the elbow?
So like this area, this right here, he snapped it right in the middle.
So
of
there's a
half.
joint there that's connected with tendons, and it was ripped and snapped. And all the rescuers knew that it would probably be an $8,000 to $10,000 surgery. So nobody was coming forward, and we were technically full. And every day Paula would say, "Look at that face." I'd be like, "We're full." She'd be like, "Look at that face." We're full. And he came from a very abusive situation, and because the family couldn't afford to fix his leg, they had put him in a 6x6 kennel in a home that they moved out of while the home was being sold, because the father had been abusive to everybody apparently, and so they separated and they had nowhere to put him, and the house was going to be moved into in, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks. So we kept watching the clock, and no one was taking this animal, no one was taking this animal, and Paula kept looking at me every day, like, you know, "Look at that face, look at that face." And if you saw this face, you would know. And so finally it got to about 3 days, and she's like, "He's gonna die in 3 days." I'm like, "No, he's not. We'll go get him." So we got him, and he needed a $10,000 surgery, and we did. You know, we didn't know what we were gonna do. We did a fundraiser on the road while we were going up there. We raised about $3,000, which was not even close enough to get the surgery, and then a lady from Sedona named Barbara saw our posts and fell in love with him and paid for the surgery. So we
She's now his grandma.
She's Grandma Barbara,
Grandma Parker.
and she sponsored him and she takes care of him. And in the last year, he had his surgery, a 6-hour surgery. He got his leg, got a titanium plate in his leg, and Paula and I were fortunate enough we brought him because one, he's super friendly, he's a big giant bear, but we brought him because we took him to Barbara's house secretly the other day, and we knocked on her door, and there was Sarge outside, so it was a very moving moment for all of us. And she got to snuggle him and hug him, and crossed a lot of boundaries. Normally we're like, "Put your hand up, be gentle, just don't pet him on top of the head," but she didn't have her hearing aid in, and she didn't hear me. So she gave him a big old hug, and she patted him on the head, and he took it, and I was like, "Oh," and I kept trying to tell her to, but she's like, "What?" I was like, "You might want to back off," and then he went, "Rrr." She's like, "Why is he growling at me?" I was like,
But the interesting
crossed
thing
a
was,
few boundaries there.
he let her get away with a lot
did, he
more than he
did.
normally does. I mean, I think he just knew.
And then he saw her the next day and was all loving on her, and he was so happy.
So, you know, I mean, the world of rescue is what we're doing, you know, of course we can't save everyone, but we do try to save as many lives as we can. The network that we work with, if we can't take them, then, you know, we work all around the country to try and find a place for them.
We're out of time.
But it's very difficult. We would love to have you join us for the rest of the week. We have a lot of other exciting things coming up for Sedona Wolf Week, and you are always welcome to contact us. We would love your support and for you to join our team, our Apex team. Our website is apexprotectionproject.org.
Betsy's going to tell you a little bit about Plan B.
Oh, no, actually what I was going to say is what you touched on is, and also, sorry.
I've seen that movie probably a dozen times and I cry every time. And at the end, you know, I talked about enough being enough and what's going on politically. I just want to put this point in real quick before the bringing back. It's even worse than when this movie was finally made. So if you like what you heard and saw tonight, you want to be a voice for wolves, please follow the politics, get involved, stay involved. Arizona is a hotbed of political activity when it comes to the wolf. In the situation, and I hate to say it because I'm always a overflowing glass kind of person, but it is dire and it is serious. So you're going to meet some amazing PAC members tonight, and hopefully they'll touch your heart in such a way that you contact Mr. McCain and Senator Flake and let them know exactly how we feel about these situations, and maybe we can start going in that back door that Jim references. So thanks for watching. As a reminder, everyone in the front row, if you've got food, please put it somewhere else. Purse is underneath. I lost a wonderful leather purse to Kona last year. That's fine. We're going to keep our energy calm and low. We're not going to stand up. We're not going to applaud. If you have cameras, you can come up and take photos. No flash. I ask that you really don't go beyond this point. Most likely they're going to come up and fall asleep. They're exhausted. But we're going to let them in now. And of course, we're on pack time, so I just got the signal. Give us a minute. Yes. No, don't howl. I appreciate your enthusiasm, but don't howl. Paula's on crutches because she has a knee injury. So we have 3 of the pack members tonight instead of 4 because she can't really handle one very well at the moment. Hi guys. Did you enjoy the movie? Clapping, right, no clapping. Well, thank you so much for coming out and seeing the film and participating in our first Sedona Wolf Week. It's really been an amazing experience so far. Julia we showed this film last year. I don't know how many of you know that Patrick had presented the film as part of the Sedona Film Festival. And
How many were here last year?
Was that?
Just seeing how many were here
Oh,
last year.
yeah.
There you go.
And so you guys know that instead of it showing 1 time, it was so popular it showed 4 times, which was really telling us that this is an important topic that people are really interested in. So we're excited to bring it back. Unfortunately, Julia couldn't join us this year, so we're representing Julia. We thought the best way to do the Q&A tonight is to start with maybe some questions about the film itself, if you have any, and then we can talk a little bit about Apex Protection Project and who we are, what we're doing, and if you have any questions about wolves in the wild, or the whole other topic of wolf dog rescue, we can do that too.
If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic.
Everyone's too interested in watching Kona and Steve make out. It's been really neat because Kona is 2.5 years old, and watching him grow up has been really fascinating. He's still considered a juvenile at 2.5. Of course, the puppies, they were here last year, and they're 1.5 years old now. He has really stepped up at being an amazing big brother to them, helping raise them and actually teaching them wolf etiquette since the time they were little. But what was amazing is when we rescued Kona, he was 14 months old, and so he was still a puppy. And as he's progressed, wolves reach sexual maturity right around this time, between 2 and 2.5. And so it's kind of like, he's kind of like an 18-year-old boy, who is all of a sudden like, you can't tell me what to do, Dad. I have my own room now, and I can drive myself, and the same attitude. So he went through this phase with Steve where he gave him a really hard time, and it was hilarious. And he's starting to phase out of that now, and
Now we have a bromance.
now he's in love again. But it's been really fun to watch him grow up. So does anybody, the film itself, Julia's whole point of making this film was to really try and bring awareness to people, especially who really weren't aware that there was even a problem with wolves in this country, don't even have wolves on their radar. And so she focused specifically on Minnesota because Minnesota was really kind of the last frontier for wolves in this country for quite a while. And so she felt like that was where she needed to focus. And then of course it developed into this beautiful story about Jim. And then, of course, you saw that we helped, we worked at another wolf rescue at the time, who is doing beautiful work. However, we created Apex a few years ago because Steve and I felt like the mission of that particular rescue was a bit different than what was in our hearts, which is focusing on wolves in the wild and advocating for them as well. So that's when Apex Protection Project was born.
By the way, when Julia met Jim, she had no idea who he really was, and they fell in love. I mean, he just adored her, and she adored him.
Not in love,
Not in love,
just
love.
as friends.
As friends.
He's married and she has a fiance.
But she,
very dear friends.
He gave her everything. He said, "Here's my footage. Use it, whatever footage you want." So they really became soulmates, and he's a wonderful, wonderful person. And I'll tell you a story about Paula and Jim later as we move on. But does anybody have any questions about the movie?
Hey, Paula.
Hi.
Steve. Two questions. One, I know you have rescued hybrids, which I used to use one. I used to own one. But I'm wondering what the current laws
You really
are.
owned it, or did he own you?
He owned me.
Exactly.
Yeah, quite an education. But anyway, what are the current laws as far as in different states owning hybrids? I'm just curious. And,
That's a really good question.
and also, myself, I would highly recommend people not to own a wolf hybrid.
We're with you on that.
Yeah, okay, so what are the different laws on wolf dogs or hybrids? It's a really hard question to answer because it depends on who's reading the book at the time. Different states have different rules. Different states call them potentially dangerous animals, wild animals, what's the other? There's a bunch of different terms depending on which state you're in, which county you're in. They are technically legal in California, but they're not in certain counties. The laws are, it's kind of like one of those things where it really does depend on who's reading the book at the time. I mean,
They're
they
kind
can
of
be
up for
interpreted.
interpretation
So
by
there's different laws.
enforcers.
Yeah, so generally they're illegal. I couldn't tell you which states are legal in now, but if he howls all night or kills a next door neighbor's cat or climbs over the fence, then they'll make it illegal. So that particular animal will get confiscated, and as soon as they get confiscated, and the sad thing is a lot of animals get confiscated that aren't even wolves. People walk around with a shepherd mix and tell everyone it's a wolf, and then he ends up in the pound and someone used a W word and he gets killed because you have to have a USDA license to pull him from the pound now. So they're not illegal in every state, but if, you know, like I said, it just depends on, I couldn't even tell you the actual facts because we've been back and forth for like
It changes
years.
very quickly.
It's very complicated.
Anybody else? Questions? Is it all right if I walk in front? Or should I go around behind?
What's that?
Is it all right if I go around in front?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank
Anybody
you for
have a
asking.
question?
Hi, it's not really a question, but I heard on the news tonight, going along with this movie, that they found 2 Mexican wolf pups today in Arizona, and they were both dead. One had died from distemper, and they're not sure what the other one died of. But just
Oh,
adds to
I
what's
haven't
going
even
on
checked my
right now.
phone in 4 days, so I don't know what's going on in the world, but that's sad.
You know, someone was suggesting, one of the volunteers from the last show, he said that like the fox hunting in England, that activists, they get crazy, they do stuff that's not bad, but they'll like put stuff down that distracts the horses when they're trying to chase the foxes. And he's saying, you know, that there might be some room for some creative activist action in the wolf-heavy states like Minnesota. Not that anybody here is from Minnesota, are you?
From.
Are you?
Far from.
Or the other thing he was saying, like if everybody bought don't they have to buy a hunting license?
Yeah, that's a complicated issue too, because he just keeps selling them, and I think like Mark Cook's out there somewhere could probably tell us more about that, but my understanding of it is they have a quota every year,
But if everybody bought the licenses, and then
Yeah, it's
didn't
not a
hunt-
quota on licenses, it's a quota on how many they kill, so they can
Oh.
keep selling licenses until they've killed the
Until
quota.
the
Is
quota
that
is
correct, Mark?
met.
Oh, that's nice.
Is that correct?
No, how it works is, okay, we've kind of thought about this a little bit.
Mark Cook is from Wolves of the Rockies. He spends his time trying to create a buffer zone around Yellowstone National Park. so
Okay,
that-
so this is how it works. And we thought about that exact thing. We figured maybe they only print 2,000 licenses, we could buy the 2,000 licenses. They're $19 a piece. Half goes to radio collaring the wolves, and half goes to lethal removal of wolves in Montana. But the point is, they'll keep printing licenses. So if I bought 10,000 licenses, they'll print 20. So on an average every year, 16 to 18,000 licenses are sold in Montana. Half that money's used for lethal removal of wolves, and the other half is used to radio collar, because what they do is they don't want to spend a lot of time looking for these wolves. So they use the radio collars to locate them more quickly, and then they kill them.
So it's a lose-lose.
So, yes? Oh, another question? Well, what we can do, you know, for those of you who saw us last year, we're Apex Protection Project. And the reason that we call ourselves Apex Protection Project is because our goal is to protect our apex predators, the wolf specifically. We started about 2.5 years ago with the intention of focusing on advocacy for wolves in the wild. And along with that came the honor of becoming a wolf dog rescue at the same time. That was what we were kind of already doing, and it just kind of flowed naturally. So we just went with it. And right now we have 7 beautiful rescued wolf dogs from all over the country who came from some pretty intense situations, either abuse, neglect, physical or emotional issues, abandonment, obviously. And we're very lucky. It's very strange that we ended up with animals and wolves are very shy creatures, and so are wolf dogs generally. And we ended up with a pack of very friendly, outgoing wolf dogs who love people, who love interacting with people, and have kind of all stepped up happily to help us spread the word about the true nature of wolves, and to kind of be wonderful ambassadors. We have their stories. Some of you saw these guys last year, like us.
No one is listening to a word.
That's totally fine. This is really what it's all about. There's something very special about meeting these guys one-on-one that's different than anything else, because you're coming in contact with their energy and you're sensing who they really are, and these guys really do represent wolves in the wild as well. They carry the same energy, and they're very familial. I mean, they really do demonstrate a lot of the aspects of wolves in the wild. So when you're interacting with these guys, you're getting a real sense of who we're really trying to protect and who deserve protection. If any of you have any interest in asking any questions about Apex specifically, we're very happy to answer any questions you may have. He's looking at me going, you do.
That's a great question. We believe that the next generation is the answer. We believe that most of the people in power right now are probably not going to make the change that we're looking for. So,
Silly.
Found yourself a bone, huh? Really? So we believe that the next generation is the answer to this. So we spend most of our time, if we're not rescuing these guys or transporting them across country or trying to find homes for wolf dogs, we spend a lot of our time doing free school presentations. We don't charge for the school presentations. We're hoping that we can keep affording to do that. So a lot of our donations and a lot of our stuff goes towards getting into every school. You know, some of the schools we go to are in Malibu. They can afford it, and we ask them for a donation, and they can, but a lot of schools can't. So our hope is that by reaching the next generation, I'm connecting them to nature and teaching them about the apex predator and wolves in general, and using these guys to show them how incredibly remarkable they are, will eventually, age out the people that are doing wrong, and will bring in the people that are doing right. We're trying to travel further and further doing our presentations. We also work with Philip Folsom, who's a corporate trainer, and he teaches corporations how to work together efficiently, and his whole program is based on the structure of a wolf pack. He's going to be speaking tomorrow, actually, at Paco Diablo. Wonderful guy, and we work with Red Bull, Sage Publishing, and a lot of Chase Bank, a lot of big corporations. Shell Oil, we did a presentation for the executives of Shell Oil. And he does this whole day of training, and we come in at the end and we talk about the Wolfpack as a team and how they operate and how they're the most incredible team in nature. So that's a lot of what we do. That particular program we get paid for, and all of the money goes into our free school presentations. So that's really our goal is to educate, and these guys are wonderful teachers.
One other thing that is kind of a new thing for us that we're really excited about is we had the opportunity to attend, and some of you were at our non-lethal coexistence panel today, which is that we really believe that the advocates need to support the ranching community and try to help them make the transition into using new techniques that are non-lethal successfully, so that their animals live successfully, the wildlife lives successfully, and they coexist well together. But when you've been practicing something for so many years and generations, it's very scary and it's very hard to make these transitions. And so we really would like to start focusing more on how to bridge that gap, so that it's a win-win for everyone, find a middle ground. So we attended a coexistence panel recently, a workshop that was very successful. So hopefully we'll be able to start doing more work like that in order to help save wildlife and keeping the ranchers safe, as well as, I just lost my train of thought.
We're focusing really on our own state and maybe Oregon right now, because it's relatively new that wolves are coming in there. And I have a wonderful mentor and friend over there, Mark Cook, who's been going through this for a long time. So I ask him a lot of questions and hopefully get ahead of the game. But the ranchers in California haven't seen wolves in 100 years. So the big bad wolf just came in and everybody's scared they're going to kill their children.
No idea what to expect.
So what we're seeing is, because it's relatively new, it's not really. I'm sure some people hate them, but a lot of it is mostly based in fear, and we believe, maybe, hopefully it's true, but we believe that if we kind of work with the people and try and help them understand these animals, then maybe we can get rid of the fear, and maybe we can start. And we noticed at this coexistence panel that there were young ranchers there, ranchers' sons and daughters, and they were starting to take over the operation, and they were more open and more willing to work with these critters. And so our hope is that we can help them along, maybe get some support from the city, maybe talk about predator friendly labels, which is kind of like a dolphin safe tuna. It's a complicated issue. There's a lot of aspects to it, but and maybe we're being naive, but we really think that we can, after talking to them, we can maybe bring them some people to the table and start making some change.
Quick question here.
You rescued these wolf dogs over a period of time from a variety of places. How did the family aspects emerge?
Oh, what a great question. What's fascinating is that wolves are pack animals, and they function in the most well-balanced way when they have each other, and they're not just alone. So it happened very naturally, and we kind of just stepped back and trusted. Taboo, who we rescued 6 years ago, she was a wildling. Wild. I mean, the first day we got her, we didn't know what to do. We were, we thought, well, we're gonna have some dinner. So she had been spayed, so she was supposed to be laying low with us at our house, even though she was living at the other rescue. And so we put her in this big crate, thinking, okay, we're gonna have dinner and then we'll let her out. And this is way back when we first started rescuing, so we were still very green. And she just grabbed the gate off the thing and ripped it off and jumped on the table and just ate all our dinner like in 2 seconds flat. And Steve and I just went, oh my God, we're in for a treat. Well, that's when we realized we had to get to learning and researching and training and all of that stuff, and that was the beginning. But what she did was beautifully develop over the last 6 years into the most incredible, grounded, loving leader. I mean, she stepped into a true alpha position. And of course, in a wolf pack, what some people don't know is a wolf pack is just simply a family. It's a family. So even with our kids, when we do school presentations, in order to diffuse any kind of negative connotation with pack or any kind of fear, you hear the word pack in a meeting, oh, pack, scary to me, So we're like, okay, so if you were a wolf and you lived in a pack, do you live in a pack? And so we start to get them to associate the word pack with a positive. I live in a pack, and we work on
You
that.
went completely off subject.
No, I didn't. Because she's the leader of our pack. She's taken on the mama role. We have a code word when I go on too long. It's called microwave. He's about to microwave me. So I'll make this shorter. But anyway, so what Taboo did was she started to bring in, when we rescued Kona, she naturally kind of started guiding as a mother, and he was younger and kind of nurturing him. And then when the puppies came along, he very naturally stepped into the older brother role, or what some people will call the beta role, which is one of the oldest siblings, and started taking them under his wing. And together they taught the puppies wolf etiquette. And now we've just rescued Riggs. And it's a very natural process that we guide gently and carefully, but we allow to happen, And now the puppies, because they learned such beautiful ethics from their elders, are now helping to teach Riggs. So it's been this amazing trickle down.
We've definitely been lucky because they definitely come, they're not a family. They've come with their own issues and their own baggage, just like we do, and a lot of them have come from abuse. So allowing them to heal, but what we've realized, and we're small now, and it's kind of nice to be small, but we're going to be growing bigger and bigger. But the beauty of us having 7 animals right now is that we can allow them to kind of heal each other, and it's really beautiful to see that structure develop. And obviously they don't get along right away. I mean, Riggs, our new rescue, had no social skills whatsoever, and he went to the school of hard knocks, and Kona made sure he knew he was boss. But you kind of got to let it happen, but you kind of got to be there to make sure that no one really gets hurt. And we have enough experience now to kind of gauge how far it can go without them getting hurt. And eventually, they actually accepted each other, and they're great. And the other beautiful thing is, I don't think there's any rescue in the country that does what we do. We've trained, I can't say trained, you never train them, they train you, but we've encouraged them to come back when they're off leash. And they do, most of the time. So these guys actually get to run as a pack and play in the hills. I wouldn't let them out in a park or anywhere where there's people, but we haven't seen anyone for 3 years up in our hills where we are. So they get to go out every morning as a pack, and depending on how many we take out, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 6, and we call that the shit show, because it is. Sometimes Thor sees a rabbit and we're like, oh crap. But for the most part they come back and they stick together as a pack, and they teach each other how to do that. And plus we have hot dogs, so that helps. And so they get to actually experience, and we get to see them actually behave like a real pack, which is wonderful.
Third time Pat and I have seen the film, and we both still cry during it.
Yeah, me too.
And each time there's something new that stands out. It looked like those were Anatolian shepherd dogs that are used as sentries, is that right? Along with the donkeys?
I believe so, but I can't swear to that because I actually don't know. But I think they were other Pyrenees or something like that.
Yeah, and the thought that came, just thinking of Defenders of Wildlife having their reimbursement program for loss of livestock, I was wondering, just as, we have seeing eye dogs and companion dogs and so on, if there's a training program for sentry animals like the donkeys and the dogs, where the ranchers can get these animals to serve as sentries for their herds?
Yeah, I can only tell you what Carter Niemeyer taught us when we were at the speaker. I don't know if you know Carter Niemeyer. He was actually the guy that trapped most of the wolves, all of the wolves I think that were released in Yellowstone. He trapped them in Canada, brought them over. He was a government trapper for a long while. He's probably one of the leading experts on wolves in the country. One of the issues that he said with the dogs is that they're great. You can't just leave them alone because wolves are territorial and will sometimes get into a fight with the dogs, and sometimes the dogs actually attract the wolves. He said that they're better if you use them in conjunction with people and other methods. They can be used, but they're not an answer as such, like you just don't leave them out there, because it can create sometimes more of a problem than it can help. They are very useful though. I don't know much about using dogs. I mean, maybe Mark and Casey do, I don't know, but I can only speak to what Carter said, and Carter pretty much knows everything about wolves.
Oh, Oliver's here too, so.
Is Oliver here?
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Oliver might know.
Good, we have some good
You know.
backup here.
So,
We got some experts out here.
dogs are mostly useful because they provide an audible deterrent for wolves, and the idea of what Carter is saying is the job of the dog is to call the person, not to keep the wolf away. And the failures that we see when people deploy guarding dogs is that they don't keep people on the landscape all the time. And so the dog has a job that it can't do because the person that needs to come is unavailable. Carter's right. We do see that the tendency to bring in wolves, especially if you bring in dogs near a den site or a home site, the wolves are territorial. They will kill these dogs. No matter how big a dog, it isn't a match for a family group of wolves. So the other problem is that livestock, especially the way we do it in the West, is really widely distributed over the landscape, and because they're not concentrated, the dogs can't protect any large number at one time. They're much more effective with sheep where there's a shepherd on them.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
More questions, one here and then one in the
We're going to defer to all the experts in the audience tonight.
I was thinking before you mentioned about the letting the pack run in the hills, and then you mentioned a little offhand about rabbits. I was wondering, are your rescue dogs essentially natural hunters? And the thought behind that is, can you ever see a time of releasing any of these animals into the wild? I mean, they seem healthy and what have you. I think because probably they're wolf dogs, perhaps they're not adapted, whatever. But I would like to.
That's a good question, and the answer is it's pretty much illegal in most places just to release an animal into the wild anyway. But they didn't come from the wild, so he'd probably end up in someone's dumpster somewhere, I mean, he gets fed off a silver platter every day, and he doesn't really know how to hunt. No, it's because they were bred in captivity and because they don't have their natural family. They wouldn't be able to function in the wild the same way.
Here's the beautiful thing about a wolf pack is that we are closer to wolves in behavior than primates, even though we're biologically closer to primates. Behaviorally, we are the animal we are closest to in family structure and the way that we function as a society, and everything is like the wolf. Socially, right. So the beautiful thing about a wolf pack is that they pass tradition down from generation to generation. So it's really important that they are born in the wild and they learn from a wild parent how to function in the wild. If they're born in captivity, they're taken away from their mothers immediately, and they are not, I mean, it's just, that information is just not there, that tradition is not there, so they really cannot function in a healthy way in nature in the way that a wild wolf would, so no, they never get re-released.
Now, having said that, when these guys do see a squirrel or a rabbit, they operate instinctively like a pack, and it's really remarkable to see because they didn't grow up together, they didn't learn this from anyone, they immediately separate, split up, and they're not that good at catching the squirrels, to be honest with you, but they've caught one once in a while, and then they don't know what to do with it. They sit there with it in their mouth like, where's my foster farms? So no, they don't really eat, these guys anyway, I'm sure some do. I know some wolf dogs that actually do eat the squirrels and stuff like that. But these guys, they kind of walk around with it all proud, and then they bury it somewhere, and you know, a coyote gets it later on. But when they don't catch them very often, but when they do, you see that instinct immediately, the way they separate and split and herd. It's just in them. But you know, functionally, no. They you know, like I said, they eat steak every morning. They're like, why hunt? Even the coyotes want to live with us now. They follow us around. They're like, really?
One more question in the back.
This might be a little personal, but would you just give us an idea of what a day at Apex is like? Like, when do you get up?
Is that your mom?
You know, the cleaning and the feeding and the...
That is!
It is your mom.
Oh my goodness.
I really think that's what the gentleman was asking you earlier.
Yes.
What's your day like?
Okay, so to humor my mom, because she's actually come out and visited and watched us do it and been like, oh my God.
Watched you?
And helped, I'm sorry. And Erica and Danae can attest to this too, because they spend a lot of their days with us and get there very early in the morning. And you know, the weather of course has something to do with it, but we really do, you know, exercise for us is the most important thing, even above like snuggling and food. These guys need to get their exercise and to stay well balanced. So the first thing we try to do is get them out before we feed them and hike everybody. And that's 7 wolf dogs to take, and that's a lot of work. We usually do about 3 or 4 hikes a day. And then we come in, and usually, you know, some of us will go and scoop poop and change waters and make sure their kennels are nice and tidy. And the other group will start getting their food prepared for 7 wolf dogs. They eat a pound of raw meat in the morning. Riggs gets a 1.5 pounds because he's a puppy and his metabolism is insane, and he's still a twig. And then generally we ask them to rest for an hour, and they're learning go to bed or it's nap time, and they know, especially Thor is really good. He goes, okay, and he goes, lies down. And once their tummies get going, they naturally want to rest anyway, but because their chests are so long and narrow, it can lead to bloat very easily. So we try to be very protective of that. We've actually in our career of rescuing wolf dogs and working with them, we've had quite a few.
It's only a career if you get paid for it.
That's right. It's not a career.
It's a hobby.
In our dream, in our hobby
It's
of
life.
Anyway, in our daily life, we've actually had quite a few wolf dogs die from bloat. It's pretty common. So we try to be very careful of it. So they rest, and then we will do fun exercises with them. Their brains are 30% larger than a domestic dog's, and they use them because they have to strategize out in nature. Lots of strategy, so they love puzzles, and they love being asked to do things like we play seek with them or hide and seek, and then we teach them things. We don't teach them tricks. We're just not into that. We just kind of, no, you don't teach a wolf tricks. That's kind of, but we do play games with them and teach them things that keep their minds going, helping them
We
figure
take them
out.
out a lot. You know,
Yep.
they go to school, so we have to keep, if you don't keep socializing them, they kind of revert back, and especially now we live in the country, we need to get them out if they're going to be around schools and around kids and stuff
And
like that.
socializing with people, so
We go
we'll
to fun
actually
places. We take them to Rodeo Drive
Yep.
sometimes. That's kind of fun.
just fun different excursions that we go on, and then of course at night, if the weather's nice, maybe we'll choose to do nighttime hikes instead. We just built a nice big turnout. It's a 1/4 acre, And so generally in the evening we'll do a big playtime, although Kona's enclosure is huge, and so they do a lot of playtime in there too, where they get to wrestle and play and chase each other. And then it's dinner time. They have kibble at night because, of course, in the wild, if they were to take down a big ungulate, they would get all the contents of the stomach, which has all those wonderful greens. And, of course, being in captivity,